Button time. Alright, what's going on with this? Why am I getting 20% dropped frames? I thought I figured this out. I thought the streaming was going okay, but it's just not. Whatever. Alright. Turn this down. I went to see the Exit 8 movie yesterday. Just on the, that indie game, Japanese indie game where you have to, like, you're walking down the hallway at the bus station trying to get to the exit, and you have to find, like, it's a looping hallway, and every time you go down there's a chance that, like, something could be different, that there's an anomaly. So you're trying to find anomalies, and sometimes they're, like, small, sometimes they're big and scary and weird. I don't know. It's such, like, a gameplay focused game. I was like, when they announced the movie, I was like, how are they gonna make a movie about this? And it turns out pretty well. It was it was a very interesting movie. They did a lot of cool like, long takes. They must have built, like, 3 of the hallways so they could do these long takes. I did notice parts where, they probably did a hidden cut there. Like, the camera would drift off the camera would be following the main character, and then it would, like, drift off the character for a second and kind of move quickly. It was like, that's probably a good place for a hidden cut. Because that's usually what they do in those, like, when they have long takes, but they're really long and it's, like, kind of unreasonable to actually do the whole thing in one take. You can do a hidden cut when the camera moves quickly, usually, and also it helps when there aren't characters when there aren't characters on screen. When there aren't characters on screen? Why was that hard for me to say? But, like, if the camera goes, like, zoom, like, it's easy to kind of sneak another camera, like, another shot that goes zoom, and kind of cut it in between those, or, like, not crossfade, but crossfade is audio. The video version of that. I'm kind of having a brain fart there. But but you can like sneak in a little cut there and people won't notice and it'll still look like one shot. So what I think they did in the movies, they had, I think, 3 hallways. And just kind of did some creative editing to make it feel like infinite hallways. And then also there's the issue where, like, if you turn around in the game, you still encounter the hallway, but it'll go the other way. So they had to do some creative editing to get that to happen. Like, yeah, like, as, you know, a... just... I'm not like a filmmaker, but I have enough experience with film stuff. Like, I minored in film, and I made a few, like, kind of dumb, crappy short films for classes. It was, you know, one of those movies that was very interesting to kind of think about how it was made. But it was also just, like, a cool movie. I think they kind of... I kind of wonder what it would be like to watch it without knowing about the game, because it was, you know, I know about the game. I don't think I played the game myself, but I've watched streamers play the game, so I kind of like got the general gist. And I kind of like, you know, when they did some anomalies, I was like, oh yeah, there's the anomaly. It was also sort of a weirdly interactive movie, because there were times that the characters would miss an anomaly, so it was sort of a like, oh, can you spot the anomaly that the character missed, sort of thing. But yeah, it was a neat movie. Let's see, I'm trying to decide if I should focus on one cube at a time so I don't like lose track. And yeah, it's also like a movie where, like I said, I was like, how are you gonna make a movie about it? Because there's not really a story to the game. It just kind of, there's a premise, and then you know, beat, like, what am I trying to say? There is a premise, but there aren't really characters. There aren't really motivations. So they had to, like, come up with that for the game. And I think they did a good job at coming up with an interesting story, kind of relating it to the, kind of the tedium of everyday life, which I guess was sort of what the game was going for, but they kind of made it more apparent in the movie. And then also, I don't know, like, I don't want to spoil too much. It was a cool movie. It's worth seeing. I think it's interesting that after the success of Five Nights at Freddy's, I guess a lot of studios were like, oh yeah, let's try to pick up these small, like, indie horror games that kind of went viral on streaming sites and stuff. Because, like, we got Iron Lung, we got The Mortuary's Assistant, we got what was it? I guess the Backrooms kind of counts. Because the Backrooms, like, there have been games about the Backrooms, but it wasn't created as a game, I don't think. It was like it was one of those things like Slender Man, where it was like a concept created just online on message boards and stuff. But then it kind of, there have been games made about it that kind of made it more popular. But like that looks interesting. Apparently the Mortuary's Assistant wasn't good. I didn't see it. But I thought the trailer looked pretty interesting. But yeah, that one apparently wasn't good. But, you know, Iron Lung was pretty cool, and Exit 8 was pretty cool. And they should do the Toilet 8 next. Which is like a parody of Exit 8, where instead of being in a train station, you're in, you know, going through a bathroom. It's basically a high effort shitpost, and I can respect a high effort shitpost, like literally a shitpost in this case. Because it's like it wasn't, you know, they could have done that concept very, just to get the joke out of the way, but they actually made an entire observation game like the Exit 8. It just was silly. Let's see. This one or this one? I think one of these is special. It might be this one. Ooh, yeah, there it is. It's a very special button. It is a cube button, because most of the buttons are flat. But I made that button the cube, just because it's the only one like that in the game. What other movies? There's a few movies coming up that look pretty cool. Let's see. I just gotta take it. So I do like the AMC A-list thing. I've been trying to use it more. But it's like 20-something bucks a month, and then you can go see like unlimited, I guess not unlimited, but effectively unlimited movies. So I think it's at a time when a movie ticket is like 20 bucks or can be like 20 bucks. You know, that's a pretty good deal. So I've been trying to use that more. Like, for a while, I kind of just didn't. I was still paying for it, but not really using it. And it was like, man, I'm wasting money. But then, like, once something comes out, it's like, if you watch 2 movies in a month, it pays for itself. But I've been trying to use it more and, like, get out and see movies that maybe, you know, sometimes aren't really in my, normal comfort zone. I'd be like, that sounds like an interesting premise, or like the trailer was kind of interesting. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this movie, but I'll go check it out. So I've been, you know, trying to see more movies. And I do like going into movies kind of blind sometimes. It's being like, I don't really know what this movie is about. I have a vague idea of the concept. Let's see where it goes. Because Because like with the franchise stuff, I'm usually in the know enough that I'm like, yeah, I know who all these characters are. I know how all of this is gonna work. I like. There's not really a lot of mystery or surprise when I'm going to see like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars or something. So sometimes it's fun to go see a movie that I'm just like, I don't really know what this movie is. They got solid reviews. It's kind of, I heard the premise or saw the trailer. Sometimes I don't even watch the trailer. There was a movie last year called Good Boy, and it was just, I heard the premise was just like, it is a horror movie from the point of view of a dog. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. I'm not even going to watch the trailer. That sounds like an interesting premise. I'm going to go watch that movie. And it was pretty cool. I didn't love it. I kind of... they had a bit at the end that was like talking, like after the credits, that was kind of talking about how they made the movie. And that made me appreciate the movie more. Because it was like, oh, they went through a lot to like get performances out of a dog. And they weren't I don't know, or to make it seem like they got performances out of a dog. And so that like definitely made me appreciate the movie more. I don't know if I'd say, I don't know, like I liked that movie, but it was sort of it was exactly what it says on the tin. It was a pretty standard and kind of predictable haunted house movie, but from the perspective of a dog. And that was neat. I was kind of hoping they'd do something more with the premise. But then after, seeing the thing about what it took to actually make it, I was like, oh, okay, well, they did about as much as they could have with this premise, like considering, what it took to make. I don't know. See, next week, I just found out about this the other day, but next week they're bringing Speed Racer back to theaters. Speed Racer is one of my favorite movies of all time. I saw it like when it came out in theaters. I don't know. Let's see. Like I was a huge fan of The Matrix. I even like the sequels. Like they got their issues, but they're a fun watch. And like, just The Matrix was kind of a defining thing for me growing up. So when the Wachowskis were doing their next thing, like obviously I was gonna be in on that no matter what it was. But then they like announced it was Speed Racer, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I had watched Speed Racer a bit. I'd caught a few episodes on like Cartoon Network and stuff. I kind of like that was my introduction to Japanimation, as we called it, before anime became the standard term. Like even before Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, I knew about Speed Racer. And then like they released the trailer, and I was like, oh, okay, this is F-Zero. So yeah, I was absolutely there day one, and also day two, and also day three. Like I saw it like 4 or 5 times in theaters when it came out, because that was just like, it just blew my mind. Like even still, what's it been? It came out in 2008, so it's been 18 years since it came out. Like, there's been nothing else like it. It just, I don't know. Speed Racer is just such a one-of-a-kind movie that critics at the time dismissed as just like soulless slop, just kind of throwing a whole bunch of bright colors at the screen to jingle keys at children, basically. And a lot of the reviews brought up candy. They're like, oh yeah, it's just candy colored nonsense. And yeah, they were wrong. I just, like, opinions and stuff and whatever, they were just wrong. It's a genuinely heartfelt movie that, like, you don't get many of, especially with that kind of budget. Like, there's no... They fully dedicate to the premise, and there's no nudging and winking at the viewers. They're just like, yes, there is this family. Their last name is Racer. One of their sons is named Speed. The dad is named Pops. The mom is named Mom. And we're not going to, like, nudge and wink that this is silly. We are asking you to buy into this world. This just very, you know, it isn't poisoned by irony. It's just like, here is our world. We're making a movie that is kind of a metaphor for making art. But also, it's the coolest action movie you've ever seen. And yeah, I feel like that was maybe not the first time, but that was like a big moment where, like, I really liked something that just kind of everyone else hated. And it was kind of vindicating to see that kind of shift over time. Where, especially like in 2018, the 10-year anniversary of that movie, people kind of went back and were like, oh, this actually kicks ass. And it's been kind of interesting to watch, like, occasionally I'll go see how it's doing on Rotten Tomatoes, and like when it came out, I think his reviews were in like the 30s. They were very bad. It was just a very hated movie, and just over time, people have, reviews have, like, critics have kind of gone back and added more reviews, and that's been kind of creeping up. I think it's like in the 50s now. Let's check. Actually, I can. 42, which is like much higher than it was when it came out. Still low, but I don't know. It was like so critically panned when it came out, and so I don't know. It was the wrong movie at the wrong time is the thing. It was, it was a very. Maybe you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it type movie. Because it was, it was 2008. It was 2000. The 2000s were the gritty era. Like 2008 was the height of gritty reboots. Like 2008 was The Dark Knight. It was like the first Iron Man, which people forget, like, from where the MCU was gone. But the first Iron Man was pretty grounded. for for a superhero movie, like in the way that The Dark Knight was. It wasn't as gritty as The Dark Knight, but there was some of that going on. It did still sort of lay the foundation for what Marvel movies would be like, with like it did have the jokes, and Robert Downey Jr. being Robert Downey Jr. But it was much more the premise of a weapons manufacturer makes a suit of armor, and there's no magic, there's no aliens, there's no like mad science, but like the Iron Man type suit isn't actually realistic, but it was presented in a way like in The Dark Knight and I need to stop saying so much. That's my filler word. But like Dark Knight and the Batman Begins, it was sort of a little pattern here. It was presented in a way that seemed plausible. And it wasn't, there was sort of I remember when they announced that, hey, this is going to be like this big crossover thing, and we're going to do Captain America and the Hulk and Thor. There was this, some people, including me, were like, oh, how are they going to fit that in with the tone of the first Iron Man? And the answer is they just kind of expanded the tone. And so we went from, it was kind of a step-by-step getting from there to, actual, I said again, like actual magic and actual time travel and actual aliens and stuff. But that was like, though I would say if there are two movies that define 2008, it's The Dark Knight and Iron Man, because those kind of shaped cinema for the next decade. At least. And that was kind of, that was what audiences wanted in 2008, and that was what critics wanted in 2008. They didn't like bright colors and silly sincerity. They were looking for realism and cynicism. And grittiness. So, yeah, like Speed Racer just kind of was exactly the wrong movie at exactly the wrong time. But since then, like I said, like people have learned, gone back and appreciate it. So anyway, that's getting released in theaters again in IMAX. And this has always been kind of like, man, I wish I could see it in theaters again. So getting released in IMAX, that's awesome. The problem is it's one night only, one showing only, and very limited theaters. There's the closest theater to me is gonna probably be over an hour driving through rush hour traffic. So that's gonna suck. So I got my ticket. Like I said, I have the A-list thing, so I was able to get the ticket, you know, without paying more. I haven't decided if I'm going yet. I'll probably decide on Monday if I decide that I feel like sitting in traffic for an hour. But I was, simultaneously happy and annoyed to see that the theater was kind of packed. I mean, people are going to see it, which meant I got a kind of crappy seat, but on the other hand, it meant I'm going to be watching one of my favorite movies with a bunch of people. Okay, what did I miss? With a bunch of people who, also want to spend their Monday evening watching this movie. Oh, there we go. There we go. I also didn't realize it's going to be 420. So there's going to be people there who are I'm going to do this one now. I don't want to do this one now. This one's annoying. But there's going to be people there who are, celebrating the day, probably. I imagine it'll be a good movie for people to watch. Like that. But that's not my thing. So I just hope they don't hurt the experience for me. I don't know. I guess it usually doesn't make people act up. It just makes them chill. But there might be a bit of a smell that I don't really care for. But we'll see. I still haven't decided if I'm even going yet. What else is coming out? Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out. It's kind of... I didn't hate the first one. There were some questionable decisions. Just to, make a movie that... It is the events leading up to Mortal Kombat. And also the main character is this original character. Now, to be fair, I kind of get what they were going for there. Because they were like... Okay, Scorpion is the most popular character in Mortal Kombat. But, at this point in the story, he's, kind of a bad guy. So it's hard to make him the protagonist of this story. So they're like, okay, well, what if we make his, give him a son, or a descendant. Say, okay, that descendant is actually the protagonist of this story. So, I see what they were going for. But I do think it was a misstep. Now that said, I thought the action was pretty good. I thought getting a movie that kind of accurately captures the violence from the games, that was pretty cool. Because, you know, the 90s movie, I think, is still one of the better video game adaptations. It does what it sets out to do. Because Mortal Kombat was heavily inspired by kind of cheesy kung fu movies, and 90s Mortal Kombat is a cheesy kung fu movie. Like, you understood the assignment. You made the movie that it was probably supposed to be. But, you know, a video game movie in the 90s when video games were still broadly considered to be for children, they definitely couldn't do an R-rated movie then, so they held back on the violence a lot. We didn't really get the fatalities. So kind of getting game accurate fatalities in that movie was pretty cool. And like Carl Urban is great, so I'm sure he'll do a great job as Johnny Cage. Seems like he's the main character this time. I think he definitely wouldn't have been my first pick, but I guess they're going for like an older, more jaded Johnny Cage, a guy who's been through his career and is like on the, you know, the the downslide. He's a has-been. Yeah, I'll go see that. Hopefully it's better. And even then, I mean, like I said, I didn't hate the first one, but it also wasn't quite, I think, what it needed to be. Also really curious how the Street Fighter movie is going to turn out, because they don't have a very great track record. Like, they got they've had two live-action Street Fighter movies, and the one that is kind of famously terrible is the better one. Because, you know, at least the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia, it's bad, but it's fun bad. And also just, like, I don't know, like, Raul Julia just kind of was bringing way more to that movie than it deserved. Because there are some genuinely good, like, lines and deliveries, like, you know, for you, the day that I slaughtered your village was the most defining moment of your life. For me, it was Tuesday. It's like, that's a genuinely good line. What is that doing in this movie? And then they had like Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, which just kind of was so bad nobody even remembers. Like, I didn't see it, but everything I've seen is like, it's not even fun bad. is just boring and yeah. So the new one, from what we've seen, at least looks like it's going to have some pretty fun fight scenes. At least looks like it's accurate to the games, maybe to a fault. Like some of those character designs, do they work in live action? Not really, but let's do them anyway. And hey, you know, One Piece did exactly the same thing. That's kind of what it reminds me of, is doing just like, look, this is a live action cartoon. What else is coming out? I'm gonna go see like the final episode of Amazing Digital Circus, which I think that's really cool that they're getting that in theaters, that it was such a big hit. I do kind of, I don't know, I feel like I have enjoyed that show, but it has been sort of the release schedule's been tough to keep my attention, because it's just kind of, you know, I watch the new episode when it comes out, and then, but I'm not like an obsessive fan watching like over and over and discussing it online. So when the next episode comes out 6 months later, I'm like, I don't really remember what happened in the last episode, so I kind of have to catch up. Sort of need like a previously on the Amazing Digital Circus. I do think I need to rewatch the whole thing, you know, before the final episode, to kind of refresh on everything. And it is only 8 episodes, so it's not like rewatching the entirety of Lost before the final episode or something. Let's see, anything else coming up? I'm interested in seeing how the Mandalorian and Grogu does, like, because it's in this weird place where I feel like it has to be really good to kind of get people back on board with Star Wars, because I feel like Star Wars has just been like controversy after, you know, controversial release. I'm actually like in I guess a weird place where I haven't really hated any Star Wars thing except for The Rise of Skywalker, and that was because that just like didn't have any like it was. I don't feel like there was any creative ambition behind that movie beyond kind of panicking that The Last Jedi was divisive and saying, "Oh no, we gotta fix this." So here's a bunch of notes of things that, you know, people are complaining about online. So let's spend the entire plot fixing these things. And it just didn't feel like it had any interest in telling its own story. And yeah, like the other things, like even when they're not good, I can at least feel like, okay, they were trying to do something here. Like, I think Obi-Wan was a huge mess. But I think they were trying something. I think they had an idea. It just kind of... It should have been a movie. And there were good moments of it. Like, there were things I appreciated. Same with Boba Fett. I thought that was overall just a waste of a concept. I don't know. I don't know, but they were going for something. It was just poorly executed, and that's kind of, I feel like a lot of Star Wars is that they were going something, but it was poorly executed. Like the prequels, I feel like there is more appreciation now for the prequels, for, you know, what they were trying to do. Especially now, you know, like why did they make a war movie about trade blockades? Well, because George Lucas knew stuff. He had studied wars, and turns out trade blockades are kind of important in warfare, even if it's not the flashiest and most exciting part of, you know, that you usually make movies about. And I also think there have been some like genuinely good Star Wars things. I think Skeleton Crew was very good. And I think it's kind of a shame that it came so late after everyone was already kind of sick of, you know, some subpar shows. It's kind of like you know, the MCU had the same issue with, like, everyone got sick of the shows, and then they released Agatha all along, and it was like, no, wait, this one is actually really good. Like, trust me, this one's really good. I do think Agatha did decently well. Like, people were talking about it, but it was still kind of not... It didn't have that hype that some of the earlier MCU shows had. Yeah, I do feel like being the first movie since Rise of Skywalker kind of puts Mandalorian and Grogu in a weird place, because they have to remind people that Star Wars can have good movies, but then also it's in a tough place because the last season of The Mandalorian was kind of not very well received. I also think they're kind of banking on the Baby Yoda hype, and I'm not sure there really is much Baby Yoda hype anymore. I think people really loved Baby Yoda in 2019 when we first saw him, and then just kind of like still kind of yeah, he's cute, but it's not quite the hype anymore, right? I also wonder if they're doing maybe too much Filoni fan service, because that is okay. As someone who does really like the Filoni shows, I thought Clone Wars was great. I thought Rebels was great, and I am very happy to see a lot of those characters coming back. I think, you know, most people don't know who those characters are. So I think, I hope what they do is just like treat those characters like they're new characters, because if you do that thing where it's like, oh, this like the slow reveal of this character who's returning, and then like half the audience is like, I don't know who that is, it loses them. I feel like that kind of happened in Boba Fett with Cad Bane, where it was, oh, they did this kind of build up and reveal. It's like, oh, it's Cad Bane, and then a whole bunch of people was like, who the hell is Cad Bane? It's like, okay, I get it. You know, if you didn't watch Clone Wars, you don't know who Cad Bane is. But if you did watch Clone Wars, you're like, oh yeah, it's Cad Bane. And most of the audience didn't watch Clone Wars. So what was his name? Imbo, the hat guy, and Zeb, like, oh yeah, I'm happy to see them. I just hope they don't treat them like, oh, look who it is. It's this guy. I hope, you know, just treat them like this is a new character. Assume that the audience is meeting these characters for the first time. These are just random guys. Imbo's gonna have some cool action scenes where he does cool stuff with his hat. And Zeb's gonna be fun and charming. And like, get people on board with these characters. Don't assume they're already on board with those characters. You have to earn the right to assume people are already on board with those characters. And this is kind of, I don't know, sort of getting off track, but this is kind of a thing that, like, these, you know, big IP companies don't really know where their characters are in that sort of fan servicey thing. Because you have to earn the cheer, and it takes time to earn the cheer, and a lot of them like don't want to put the time. It takes time. It takes time and work, and good writing, and good like. I don't know how to put it, but there's just a vibe, right? Of you have to know when you can do the character like walking out and the slow reveal, and then you see his face, and then the fans are gonna be like, oh yeah, it's that guy. Like you have to. It's an art form, and it takes time to kind of establish that character. And a lot of these companies just kind of don't want to do the time and work to establish the audience investment in that character. They want to jump straight to the, ooh, yeah, it's that guy thing. And it's, you can't do that. It makes it worse. Like, if you try to do one of those reveals and it doesn't land, it just has a big stinky feeling. Like it. So I think like you really gotta have to have your finger on the pulse of what the audience wants. And if you're not absolutely certain it's gonna be a banger, you can't do the slow reveal thing. I'm also wondering about like how they're gonna handle this in Avengers Doomsday, because a lot of people are going to be watching that movie for the old Avengers, for RDJ as Doctor Doom, and for, things they remember from Endgame and earlier. And also the X-Men. So it's like, I don't know. Like that movie similarly has a lot on its shoulders. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out for both Star Wars and Marvel this year. Because being good isn't enough, I think. Like, being good is the bare minimum. If the people who go see it say it's good, that's great. But if not a lot of people go see it, that's not, I don't know. Like, Thunderbolts was very good. I think, like, the more time has passed, I think Thunderbolts is probably in the upper tier of MCU movies. And people didn't go see it. So it's like, just being good isn't good enough. You have to be, I don't know. You have to get people in seats. I do think people are going to be in seats for Avengers Doomsday just because it is the first Avengers movie in 2019. 7 years. So like, I do think it is in a good place in that sense, and that people are at least going to give it a chance. I think the real test is going to be, do they come back for Secret Wars? I've also seen, like, people kind of speculating, like, on, oh yeah, what are they going to do after Secret Wars, and saying, like, oh yeah, it's going to be I think Feige said it's going to be, there's going to be a reboot, or of a sense. But, like, you read the context, and he doesn't mean, like, literally we're doing a complete reboot. I think it would be... Because, like, what a lot of people want that I've seen online is for them to just basically do a complete reboot and throw out everything from... Well, throw out pretty much everything and just start fresh after Secret Wars, except now it's all about Spider-Man, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. Like, those are the main focus, and, like, we don't really care about any of those other things. And it's like, that is a, like, objectively terrible idea. Because the MCU was built on popularizing characters who weren't very well known or very well liked. I mean, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America were, like, known, but they weren't like mainstream known. Like, you knew who Captain America was. He was the guy who looks like a guy who would be called Captain America. But a lot of people assumed he was just, like, propaganda. Just, America, great, yeah. And it wasn't really until the movies that people were like, oh, wait, no, this guy is actually really cool, and he is actually principled, and actually, like, stands up, you know, is willing to go against the government when he thinks they're wrong. Like, he's not a mouthpiece. He's a character who... I mean, he is, like, the superhero kind of archetype of, like, this is a guy who is just good. And that doesn't mean he never makes mistakes, but he is, like, not corruptible. He is a guy that you can look up to and be like, I want to be like Captain America. Like, obviously, I'm never gonna have superpowers, but I want to be a guy who can, like, stand up for what's right. And, you know, that is an archetype that for a long time was considered boring, especially in the age of anti-heroes and, you know, dark and gritty characters. And it was kind of the MCU showed that, yeah, that kind of character can still work. That kind of character can still be very good. And, like, Iron Man, before the movie, everyone thought he was a robot. Like, that was literally... They did, like, market research, and they were like, oh, we need to figure out how to explain to people that this isn't a robot. This is a dude in a suit. And so you go watch the first trailer for that movie, and they are heavily focused on Robert Downey Jr. outside of the suit. And kind of the suit up is kind of something that happens late in the trailer. Because they really needed to communicate, hey, this is not a robot. This is a guy in a suit. And this is why you want to care about it, because this guy is really cool and interesting and likable. And of course, like, the Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were before the movie. In comics, fans were like, who? Like, that was the whole joke in the movie, where he says, I'm Star-Lord. And the guy says, who? And it's like, that's because that's what the audience was saying. Nobody knew who these characters were, but they kind of got lifted up to... I mean, I would say that they're A-listers. Like, Rocket and Groot are kind of household names as far as Marvel superheroes go. Oh god, this is gonna suck. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, like if you throw all that away, like I don't know. The reason the MCU is what it is specifically because they didn't have the X-Men, they didn't have Spider-Man, they didn't have the Fantastic Four. And I think if you know, now that they have Spider-Man and X-Men and the Fantastic Four, they just kind of ditched everything the MCU was. It's not even the MCU anymore. Like, that's a different Marvel series. I think you know, especially after these upcoming Avengers movies, like let's see, how can I put this? If these movies are good, people are going to be invested in Sam and Yelena and, you know, whoever shows up in these movies. And if you just kind of like throw that away afterwards, and you're like, nope, we're just going back to, we're getting rid of all these characters, you've kind of spent a lot of fan interest. I think what they need to do what I think would be a good idea to do is, you know, do these movies, make them as good as they can, and try to give like every character a place to shine. And I think the Russos have been pretty good at that. You know, apparently I haven't watched any of their other stuff since the MCU, but apparently they haven't done really great work. But they did a real good job with all of their MCU projects at managing these ensemble casts and giving everyone like a time to shine. And you know, maybe you go into Captain America Civil War thinking like, why is Ant-Man in this movie? Nobody cares about Ant-Man. And then he has this cool moment and you're like, oh, okay, I care about Ant-Man now. That was cool. Or like before Infinity War, I feel like Doctor Strange was sort of not, like, people saw the movie and they kind of liked it, but it was like, eh. And then after Infinity War, he like jumped up the list pretty far. So I do think, you know, that is kind of the main thing. Well, the main thing these movies need to focus on is just being good. Just telling a good and interesting story that people are engaged in. But that kind of, you know, that goes without saying. But also, second is they just need to like make the characters shine. Get people invested in these characters. Not in the sense of like, oh, we already have 13 projects lined up with these characters, so we're gonna give them a moment here to set up those projects. But no, just like make people like these characters. In fact, I think they shouldn't even have like the plans, like what movies they're going to make, set in stone yet. I think after Doomsday, they should take a year off and sort of, you know, see like which characters landed, which characters are people really liking and wanting to see more of. So let's see, or after Secret Wars. So like, we're getting Doomsday this year. We're getting Secret Wars next year. I think take a year off after that. Come back and let's see. I don't know. I guess a year off probably wouldn't work, because 2028 is going to be the 20-year anniversary of the MCU, so they're probably going to want to do something. Hooray! I'm finally done with this awful room. I made this game. Like, this game sucks. Hey, I get to say that. You don't get to say that. I can say my game sucks, but you don't get to say that. What's in here? Oh yeah, this room is very silly. Because it does this. So each one of these things are... Yeah. But yeah, okay, so maybe, like, whatever they're planning for the 20-year anniversary in 2028, it seems like they're kind of fast-tracking X-Men. But like, I would say the... Instead of, like, setting up all of the movies they're going to do after Phase, you know, after this whole thing is over, I think they just read the room. Just be like, okay, yeah, these characters clicked with people in Doomsday and Secret Wars, so let's do more of these characters. I do think they need to kind of chill on, like, introducing new characters. They introduced way too many new characters in just the past 4 or 5 and 4 and 5. And, you know, people were like, oh, that's way too much to keep up with. And so, like, we haven't seen most of those characters again since their debut. But I think, like, you know, with X-Men kind of leading the charge, let's say X-Men is 2028, I think they'll have... I think having, like, a couple years that are kind of lighter on stuff would be good. I don't know. Also, they need to do Shang-Chi too at some point. Like Shang-Chi was good. People liked Shang-Chi. It was pretty successful. And then they just kind of didn't do it again. It was just like a movie at the wrong time. Also, in general, like, a lot of these actors who kind of got into the MCU in like in Phase 4 and Phase 5, or even late Phase 3, felt like they were getting ready to, like, oh yeah, we're getting in on this huge thing. I feel kind of bad for them. Like, they kind of got in as it was kind of, you know, people were losing interest, and as, like, Disney kind of started pumping stuff out. And like, I've seen, like, Kumail Nanjiani talk about the Eternals, and he's like clearly bummed about it. But he kind of expected this to be a big thing. Like he went all in on it. They were like they even said like, hey, you don't have to get fit, and he was like, no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put in the work. Like, he was really invested in it. And then the movie was not well received, and didn't do super well. I mean, it didn't do terrible at the box office considering it released like when people were still worrying about COVID. But it didn't review very well, and it was, I think, the first critical flop in the MCU. And it sounds like, Kumail is I kind of took that kind of hard. It is kind of like, on the one hand, he is probably a millionaire and a famous celebrity, so I can't feel too bad as someone who is struggling way more than he probably ever will again in his entire life. But it's still, I can feel sympathetic to like getting excited for something and feeling like, yeah, I'm getting in on something big, and then it just kind of doesn't come together. And he's the only one who's talked about it. I'm sure a lot of them feel like that. Also, I'm gonna be honest, I thought The Eternals was alright. I think people were too hard on it. I think if it had released in Phase 2, people would have been much more receptive, or Phase 3, people would have been much more receptive to it. But I think it came at the very start of, not the very start, but it came at like a point where people started to get a lot more critical of superhero. In fact, I'll even say, if it released in Phase 6, I think people would have been like, oh, okay. But it released, I don't know, at a point where people were kind of expected certain things from superhero movies, and were sort of starting to see backlash to, I don't know, it was, I don't think it was a great movie. I don't think it's, my opinion on Speed Racer, where I'm like, this is a masterpiece, and I don't understand why people, why it's getting critically panned. Or, I mean, I guess I did understand why, because I think they were wrong for not liking it. But I do think it, people were pretty harsh on it when it was, again, I'm going to go back to, I think there was actually some creative ambition there. I think Chloe Zhao was trying to do something. I think it didn't all 100% come together. But I thought it was at least interesting. And didn't deserve I don't know. I think there are definitely worse Marvel movies that got sequels. Spider-Man looks like it's going to be interesting. I mean, I guess that's why we didn't get Shang-Chi too, because what's his name? I always get the order of his. Is it Daniel or Destin Daniel Cretton? I think it's Destin Daniel Cretton. because he was gonna do Avengers, and then and now he's doing Spider-Man after like they reworked the Avengers. So I'm interested to see where that goes. It seems like they're doing a lot in that movie. There's a lot of like rumors and speculation. And especially, you know, considering like what's going on with all the Daredevil stuff in the shows now, or in the show now. It seems like this would be the perfect opportunity to have Daredevil, but they haven't announced them, but maybe it's just going to be a surprise. Also, I saw the thing where like Disney fired a bunch of people, laid off a bunch of people for like who do the Marvel visual development, or I forgot what they call it, but like the art. I think it's not the people who do like the CGI, but the people who kind of do the concept art and set the, you know, here's what this movie is going to look like. And, you know, a lot of those people have been working there for a while, and they just got laid off by a company who wanted to save a few bucks, and that sucks. And that is, like, I think not a good way to run a studio and to keep people I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about layoffs, and they're obviously, you know, as someone who has gotten laid off, they suck from that perspective, but I also think they're just bad business. They are short-term thinking. Saving a few bucks now to kind of demotivate your entire workforce. And lose the talent that you've developed. And yeah, so it sucks. I hope all those people land on their feet. I'm sure they will, because, like, you know, I worked at Marvel for 10 years and was only laid off because they were saving money. Like, that feels like a pretty good resume. I drink some water. But definitely, like, I don't know. This is something I've thought about a lot, where it's like, you have these corporations, and but you have like a lot of, okay, this is kind of trying to put these thoughts into words. A lot of people dismiss the any sort of like corporate franchise stuff as being corporate franchise stuff that has no artistic merit. And I see where they're coming from, because it is corporate. It is owned by a corporation and exists to make money. But I do think a lot of the people who work on that stuff are genuinely trying to make something good. They're working within the bounds of a system, and sometimes maybe even are passionate about the characters. I think not always. I think there are definitely times where it's like they do this thing too much where an actor is like, I was such a huge fan of this character and I'm so excited to play this character. Like, I've been such a huge fan since I was a kid. And it's like, no, you weren't. It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to pretend you knew who Blorbo the Bombo was. And it's like, it's fine. You're an actor. You're doing a job. You don't need to be a fan of the source material. It's cool when you are. But, like, you don't need to be. We understand that you're an actor. But then you got guys like James Gunn who are just, like, very clearly passionate about superheroes and comic books, and music. like he's really trying to, like, even if you don't like James Gunn's direction, he's got, he clearly is passionate about the characters and the comics themselves. You've got a lot of people who got into writing comics because they were fans of the comics, and they, got to write a cool story, and I don't know. I think the intersection of capitalism and art is messy because it's a nice thought that people are just going to make art because they're passionate and driven, just want to make something interesting, but the reality is, unfortunately, we need money. People need money to eat and, afford shelter, afford a doctor, whatever else. So you do have to, if you are going to try to create stuff for a living, you do have to consider how. Or if you want to create stuff in general, you have to consider, like, okay, am I going to try to do this for a living? Am I going to try to make money off of this? If I'm going to do that, am I going to be like a starving artist trying to make my own thing? Or am I going to work under the corporate structure and or am I going to do this as a hobby, in which case I can't really spend as much time on it, and maybe can't make stuff that's as good as I want to make. But it's something I've kind of wrestled with like my game development, deciding like which games I want to make. Because I have made a few games that were sort of my passion project, sort of, that other people just didn't care about. And most of my games are, free fan games, so it didn't really matter in terms of making money, but it did matter in terms of people caring and people wanting to play them, and it was kind of a bummer to put a lot into a game and then it turns out people don't want to play it. But then I had times when I tried to follow trends but still be, at least creatively a little bit ambitious about it. Like, I'm not going to directly copy someone else's game. I want to put some sort of spin on it. And those sometimes didn't turn out to be good. So, like, I thought about what I want to make. And I don't know, I kind of stopped doing game development for a while after my last game kind of flopped. Got really depressed and demotivated. And then I started making this, and still don't really know why. I think I just went insane. There's this movie called Dave Made a Maze. It's like this guy who's just kind of going through it, and he makes like a cardboard maze in his apartment or his house. Is it an apartment or house? It's been a while since I saw it. It's a really weird, like, surreal movie, but like he makes the maze, and then when people go into the maze, it's not like cardboard. It's like this weird alternate fantasy world where everything is made of cardboard. And yeah, so that's kind of the premise of I don't remember everything that happened. I remember it was like kind of dark and disturbing at times for a movie with such a silly premise. Like, characters die and then they don't really care. like their friends just go into the maze that this guy made, and some of them die. And it's not like, oh, it's an alternate weird cardboard world, so they come back at the end of the movie. No, they're dead. And it was like, nobody really cared. Like, they sort of were briefly shocked, but at the end of the movie, they're just like, yeah, our friends died. Oh well. And it's like, you made this maze. They died because you made this maze. It's your fault. Like, and you're not taking responsibility for it. And it's, I don't know, it's because the maze is a metaphor, and it's like you're not really supposed to take it too seriously and think about it too much, but it was definitely kind of like kind of a disturbing movie to me. And it was supposed to be a comedy. That's kind of a weird thing that happens to me. Is like there's like, most horror movies don't bother me, but there have been a few movies that were like ostensibly supposed to be comedies, and then I watch it, I'm like, that was disturbing. That was like upsetting. Like, I can do gore, people dying violently. I think that's fun. But it's like, I guess it's more like where death is sort of treated so carelessly, I guess. Like, it's just sudden, and people don't really... I don't know. Like, another movie that disturbed me, it was called, what was it? Spontaneous. And that was another one that was like, oh, this is a comedy. And I didn't think it was funny at all. It was very upsetting. It was, like, basically about a bunch of kids in high school, in their final year of high school, who just start spontaneously exploding. And when I say explode, I mean they just, like, pop like a balloon, and just blood goes everywhere. It just suddenly, out of nowhere, it can happen anytime. And it's sort of a metaphor for, like, school shootings, I guess. It felt like they were going for some sort of metaphor. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was a disturbing movie to me. Apparently I'm the only one who felt this way, because, like, everyone else I've talked to who's seen it, like, hasn't echoed the same thing. And also that movie like kind of ended with like a weird moral. She was just like, yeah, you just gotta live your life. And I sort of get where they were coming from. It was like this metaphor for like, you never know when you can die. But also, I don't know. It feels like within the context of the movie, that's not a very helpful thing to say. Like, there's a difference between a freak accident can happen and, oh my god, my classmates keep exploding, and I know, like, nobody knows why it's happening, and it could happen to me next, and I don't know if there's any way to prevent it or anything I can do about it. Like, kind of a similar thing happened with the recent Final Destination movie, where Tony Todd's character, we kind of like learn what his deal is, and he kind of tells this group of kids, like in their 20s and younger, you know, you just gotta appreciate every moment of your life. And it's that's I appreciate the sentiment. That's a nice thing to tell people in real life. Not such a great thing to tell a group of people who like know that death is literally coming from like death as an entity, not as a concept. Death as an entity has their number and is going to come for them, and they know it, and anything can kill them at any time. So that was just like, I don't know. Like, sometimes I feel like movies kind of have a message where the metaphor in the movie doesn't really fit what the message is supposed to be. Let's see what else is. Oh, they're doing like a sequel to The Social Network, I saw. I guess it's like a pseudo sequel because it's not it's not what's his face, the Jesse Eisenberg again. It's another guy, and I guess he's not the main character this time. It's the whistleblower. Oh yeah, like Dave made a maze. Guy who kind of goes insane and builds a maze. I've kind of thought about that a few times while making this game. Hopefully this game doesn't kill anyone. I don't think it will. I guess is the possibility that someone could like get so invested in this game that they forget to eat. So let's say, yeah, don't forget to eat. I'll maybe have a thing that pops up and says, hey, maybe you should go outside. Like the, you know, the Wii. Is this the final? No, one more. Yeah, this room's kind of annoying too. Any games coming out that I'm interested in? I don't know if I'll be able to afford them because I'm not doing super great in the money place, not money department, but yeah, we'll see. I think Tomodachi Life comes out next week. I'm not like not next week, tomorrow. I'm not super into that. Not really interested. That's not really my thing. But I am happy for the people who seem to be very excited for it. I'm sure I'll watch some silly streams. Rhythm Heaven coming out. Forgot when they said. I think June. I'm pretty excited for that one. I feel like Rhythm Heaven just kind of is a game that just alters your brain chemistry. You like play the games and you just kind of get the rhythm in your head, and it's there forever. Wubba lubba dub, is that true? Oh, here you go, big guy. Oh, ha. And this is like the first new Rhythm Heaven since Fever, really, which was I think 2011, like 15 years. We did get Mega Mix, but that was like what it says on the tin. It was like a collection of most of the mini games from, I don't know about most, but like many of the mini games from the first three games. And I do think Rhythm Heaven is interesting because it's like the games did not terrible in sales. I looked it up. The first, the one on the DS did 3 million-ish. Megamix did 1 million-ish, and Fever did 700,000. So like not grand slams, not blockbusters, but not terrible. Also, the GBA one was only released in Japan, so I don't know what good would be for that. But I feel like Rhythm Heaven's kind of footprint in the gaming community is much bigger than its sales would suggest. Like in the past 15 years since Fever, I feel like a lot of people have discovered those games who didn't play it back then. through memes, through videos, through fan art, through just, you know, watching streamers play it or playing it themselves. And it's like, so I do feel like there is a fan. It's like one of those games like Earthbound, where, you know, huge Earthbound fan excited to play Earthbound for the first time. I do think a lot of people who haven't played a Rhythm Heaven game themselves but have seen other people talk about how much they love them, and have seen, you know, like there's been a bunch of indie games that are just, hey, this is Rhythm Heaven, but off-brand. Like Beats and Bops and Melatonin. And then what is it? I forget what it was called. But there's another one that it's a bit more of a WarioWare. But that kind of like went a little bit viral when the demo released, and like it's more WarioWare, but it does seem to have like a heavy music element. So it's sort of, I'm sure it takes inspiration from both. So I feel like if you're a Rhythm Heaven fan, like you're probably also a WarioWare fan. If you're making a Rhythm Heaven fan game, you're probably also thinking about WarioWare, and if you're making a WarioWare fan game, you're probably also thinking about Rhythm Heaven. But I think, so I've seen a lot of people kind of dismiss the new Rhythm Heaven. Was it Groove? I keep wanting to call it Rhythm Heaven Beat for some reason. I guess because of Beats and Bops. I still need to play Beats and Bops. I was waiting for that to come to the Switch, because that doesn't feel like a PC game to me. And I also never finished Melatonin. I don't know. But I've seen a lot of people kind of look at Rhythm Heaven and be like, why are they doing this? Like, when Nintendo doesn't have a bunch of other big games, why Rhythm Heaven? Like, that's such a niche game. And I think for one thing, like, that's part of the reason. Releasing Rhythm Heaven next to Mario is just like going to hurt Rhythm Heaven's chances. But also, I don't think it's as niche as you might think. I do think there's I think there's going to be interest in it. I think it's actually going to do surprisingly well. I think it's going to do at least 3 million, is my prediction. And I think there's a chance that it kind of goes viral. Because the last time we got a Rhythm Heaven, and a completely new one, was the Wii in 2011. And the idea of like taking a clip from the game and posting it online just wasn't really common. And since then, like, consoles have added like just a button that just does that. And it's gotten a little bit tougher to do. but it's still possible. It's still much easier than it was in 2011 when you needed, let's see how am I doing, 180,000, when you needed a capture card to do it, or, you know, to film the screen. So I do think there's, you know, like a chance that some clips from the new Rhythm Heaven showing off some of the sillier mini games kind of go viral, go mimetic, and get a lot of people interested in the game. I also wonder if like some bigger streamers, I'm certain some bigger streamers will play it. Well, like one in particular I'm thinking about is RT Game, who kind of has, who has a very successful video of him playing Rhythm Heaven Fever called A Man With No Rhythm Plays Rhythm Heaven. And he just kind of not good at the game, and it's funny to watch. I imagine he will very likely play the new one because people will want to see him play it. And I kind of wonder if that'll have, like, you know, mobile game ads where it's like they intentionally play the game really bad, so they'd be like, God, you suck, let me play it, and then you just go play the game yourself and you're like, you do it right. It just kind of manipulates you into playing the game by doing it wrong. Like, I wonder if watching someone who's just has no rhythm try to play Rhythm Heaven will make people like go out and play Rhythm Heaven and go out and buy the game so they can play it themselves. There have been rumors about a new Star Fox game. I'm somewhat interested in that after his appearance in the Mario movie made me actually kind of like the character. I think it's very unlikely that the game version will be anything like the movie version, though. So, but I do wonder, like, what they're gonna do for another Star Fox game, like, because I think what the, you know, most diehard, I really need to stop saying, you know. It's a stupid filling word because you don't know what I'm about to say because I haven't said it yet, you know. But I think the fans, the most diehard fans of Star Fox, what they really want is just another Star Fox 64, but with a new level, with new levels and a new story. Like, they want that same gameplay, but actually a proper sequel. Because the series never did that again. It just, like, every game has tried something else, has tried some different angle, and they just never did the rail shooter thing again. The problem is, I don't know if that's really viable. today. A rail shooter that you can beat in like an hour, and that kind of expects you to play it over and over. I don't know if that's a game that people want to spend full price on these days. But I have wondered, like, you know, they could do roguelike elements. If you want a game that people are supposed to play over and over. There we go. There we go. If you want a game that people want to play over and over, like the kind of game that people do that with today is roguelikes, not arcade games anymore. And I think Star Fox could work as a roguelike. In fact, I think there is a... Oh, here's the orb room. It's called that because there's an orb. And it goes... Boop. I think Star Fox could work as a roguelike. I mean, think about it. It's like you're going from level to level. Imagine, you know, that standard structure that you're going from level to level, but instead of in Star Fox SNES, you choose a path and just follow the path the entire game. And in Star Fox 64, you have special objectives that can get an alternate exit from the level. I'm imagining a game where the levels are somewhat randomized, and the order of the levels are somewhat randomized, and you are maybe given special objectives that you can complete to, like, if you beat the level without completing a special objective, you just go to the next you don't have a choice about which level you go to. If you complete one special objective, you can choose between 2 routes. If you complete 2 special objectives, you can choose between 3 routes. And then, you know, you could maybe choose different, like, there are so many pilots in the Star Fox universe, so it would be cool to give each of them a unique ship and unique weapons to start with at the beginning. So, like, each character has their own ship and their own loadout. You can choose, and then as you play, in the standard Star Fox format, you kind of can upgrade your laser, from like the single laser to the double laser to the orb laser. But like in a roguelike version, you could kind of get permanent upgrades. You could, you know, the old games are very score based, so your score could be your currency that you use to buy upgrades and stuff. So I don't know. I think there is I don't really like roguelikes myself. In fact, this game started as kind of a sarcastic response to the popularity of roguelikes. said, okay, if you like randomness, let's have some randomness. But at the same time, it's not going to be procedurally generated. But I am aware that roguelikes are very popular, and I think if you want to do that traditional Star Fox gameplay formula, a roguelike would be a good angle to take. Could be a good angle to take. But my hope is that it's basically Kid Icarus Uprising. I don't know. I feel like something between sort of a middle point between Star Fox Assault and Kid Icarus Uprising would be a very good angle for Star Fox, because you'd still get the linear stages, but then you'd also have other types of gameplay that kind of flesh it out into a longer game instead of a short arcade game. Or we can get Star Fox Adventures too. I also wonder, like, in terms of story, what they're gonna go with, because the Star Fox Command had like all those alternate endings. So are they just gonna choose one of those and carry on from there, or I don't think anyone wants another reboot. I don't think anyone wants them to do the same original Star Fox story anymore. Like, we've done that. We've fought Andross. We've done that 4 times. We don't need to do it again. And also, you know, they expanded the cast. And going back to that smaller cast was, I think, part of the reason I didn't really have any interest in Star Fox Zero even before we knew it was bad. Like, what do you mean we're going back to, like, no Crystal, no Panther, no, I don't know, just the same. I want them to make like, they added the Lynx and the dog in Star Fox 2. I want them to make those characters canon. Those seem like interesting characters. The same way that, like, Star Wolf was originally intended for Star Fox 2 and then made it into Star Fox 64. I just would have no interest in another reboot, I think. But I also don't know how you continue it from where they left Command, especially since Command wasn't very successful. I guess the way to go is to just, like, start start the game with a general okay, here's the status quo, and we're not really going to bring up what the status quo was before, or like what happened before, or what led to this. Like, we're not going to specifically mention any of like which previous games led to this and which ending happened in Star Fox Command. It's just like, look, here's the team. It is basically the Star Fox Assault team. Like, we're just starting with the status quo from Star Fox Assault, where Peppy's kind of retired from piloting, and he is kind of the mentor, and the team is Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Crystal. And it's like, okay. And then we're just gonna have a space battles, and some new guy invades, and it's not Andross, and Andross isn't the secret final boss. It's like, this is just a new game. Or, you know what? Just do Star Fox Assault again. Like, the way that Star Fox 64 was like, okay, we're going to do the original Star Fox again, the same story, but, improve it, and flesh it out, and add more characters, and fully realize it in a way that we couldn't with the original version, like on the SNES. Just do that with Star Fox Assault. Just like, here's the new direction that we're going with the series. We're remaking Star Fox Assault, and this time fleshing it out to be a much better game. And then the next game isn't going to be Command. We're going to just pretend Command doesn't happen and go in a different direction. So Invincible's back on. Been watching that, and it was just kind of I enjoy it, but I feel like I'm ready for it to be done. And The Boys is back too, and I'm like, that's a similar thing. Like, I'm ready for this to be done. I'm ready for this to be the final season. And Invincible, as I understand it, has quite a bit of story left to go, but I don't know. It is, like, I like it, but I feel like I'm kind of exhausted from this thing where, like, oh, we have a fight scene and the characters just get just horribly maimed, and then they manage to win, and we kind of like jump forward and when they're in the hospital and now they're gonna be okay, and it's just kind of I feel like it removes, like, it's supposed to add the stakes because you see all this violence happening, but it kind of removes the impact of the violence when it often doesn't have a long-term consequence. Where, like, a guy gets hit in a really bad way and gets back up, and I don't know, like, a guy's head gets splattered and then he comes back the next season, and it's like, what? Come on. But then we have a guy who gets choked to death, which is like, feels kind of tame compared to a lot of the violence seen in the show. and that seems to do it. That seems to put him down for good. And it's like, it's just very inconsistent, like what level of violence means death and what level of violence means you walk it off. Like having your intestines ripped out, just walk it off. Being choked, that's, you're dead. Being, again, I also think it's, it needs to be emphasized, that the character who is choked to death is a character who can hold his breath for, like, days, presumably, while flying through space. There's also another pet peeve is, like, the Viltrumites will do this thing where they hold their hand, instead of punching, they'll, like, do an open karate chop or thrust, and it basically turns their hand into a blade, and they can cut people in half, cut other Viltrumites in half. And I always just kind of wonder, okay, then why do they ever punch? Because they will punch someone like 500 times and, they get bloody, but they're still going. Like, if you had the opening, why didn't you just do the slice? And then there's this whole subplot where they create this venom, they find this venom that they can shoot Viltrumites with to make them weaker. It's like, okay, how do you get that into them? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll just make these darts. And I'm just thinking, like, what do you mean you have a metal that can pierce their skin and you are able to shoot it at them? It's like, if you're able to pierce their skin, like Arnold says, if it can bleed, it can die. If you're able to pierce their skin, just like make a bunch of those. You don't even, like, okay, having the poison is very good, but if you have something that is able to pierce their skin, that's better than not having it. It's just, like, really inconsistent with how strong the Viltrumites are and how much damage they can put up with. Because at first it's like, oh, they are basically invincible. But then they keep introducing things that can hurt them, and it's like, so maybe they're actually not as strong. But then you remember the time that Nolan went to an alternate dimension and took over a planet by himself. It's like, okay, so they are that strong, but then he never does anything on that level again. It's like, well, he shouldn't, like, nobody should be able to stand up to someone that powerful, but they do, and it's just, I don't know. I try not to obsess too much over power scaling and stuff, but it's so inconsistent that it's distracting. And also so inconsistent in terms of, like I was talking about earlier, how much damage people can take. I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm complaining a whole lot. And I am. I do enjoy the show. feel like there have been too many moments where I was like, oh, that guy's definitely dead, and then he just, like, shows up again. And he's like, nope, I took a nap, and now I'm good. And it's like, come on. Either commit to the whole anyone can die violently thing, or don't. Or, like, you know, maim characters sometimes. Because they did a few times maim characters, but then they just got robot arms, and it didn't matter anymore. Or robot legs or something, I don't know. Then sometimes you'll have a guy who's just like becomes extremely lethal for like one scene to kill one guy, and then he just never does it again. Like, oh, if this guy moves that fast and is that strong that he's able to kill this guy, why isn't he doing that more? Like, none of our heroes should be able to stand up against them. Uh-oh. I think I'm back. I disappeared for a bit. Am I suddenly downloading something? No. Okay. Anyway, like, I am enjoying Invincible, I am enjoying The Boys, just kind of... Sometimes I get a little bit annoyed. I'm ready for The Boys to be done. I am a little concerned, that in the first episode of this season they have a guy who's a screenwriter talking about how hard it is to do series finales. And there's also, you know, it is The Boys, so it's like, it feels like having a happy ending isn't really, like, it's kind of a cynical show. It's a very cynical show. So having an ending where all the heroes manage to overcome the bad guy and save the day and save the world is feels out of character, but also feels like you know, that is probably what the people want. That's what I want. I want to see them beat Homelander. But then I think about a Game of Thrones, how its ending was very poorly received. And I feel like there's two aspects to that. One is that it wasn't very well executed, but two is that a lot of people didn't like where they went with it. And I feel like I mean it's been 7 years, so everyone has kind of talked about it. So I mean, nobody's watching this anyway. So spoilers if you for some reason made it 2 hours in 20 minutes into the 16th part of this stream, and are for some reason watching this VOD. But like, there were a lot of people who were mad that Jamie didn't get a proper redemption. And that's something that I think they maybe could have executed better. I think a lot of things they could have executed better, but I don't think it's necessarily the wrong direction. I think if you're surprised that Jamie didn't get a full character redemption, I wonder what show you were watching, because the whole show was built on, hey, we're going to build up to these kind of cliche character beats, and then we're gonna subvert it. We're gonna go in a different direction. Like we're gonna have Sean Bean spend the whole first season, like he's the hero, obviously. So he's the guy with honor, and he's gonna spend the whole first season kind of bringing up the evidence, like gathering the evidence to kind of honorably take down the bad guy. And then he doesn't. He fails and he gets his head chopped off. And then we have a couple seasons of like, oh, okay, well, now Rob is going to... He's the one who's going to do this. He's the one who's going to take up his mantle and be the honorable guy who... is able to take down the dishonorable bad guys, and he's going to follow his heart, because following your heart is good. Love wins. And then he doesn't. Like that was the whole show. It was like building up these cliches in fantasy storytelling about good and bad, and heroes and villains, and kind of punching you in the gut and being like, hey, you're dumb for thinking the heroes are going to win that. So building up Jamie to have this big character redemption arc, and then having him run back to the hands of his sister, the arms of his sister, and die with her, was in character for the show. But that made a lot of people mad, because they got so invested in that character and his redemption arc, and Gwendolyn Christie's connection to him, that they didn't want the ending that... They didn't want the subversive ending. They wanted the happy ending for those characters. And it's... I don't know. And again, like, I do think the ending... A lot of aspects about the ending were not well executed. But I do think a lot of other aspects that people got mad about were in character with the show and made sense, even if they weren't well executed. Also, like Daenerys' turn. It's like, again, everyone expected the pretty blonde girl to come back and be the benevolent ruler. we had kind of seen her dark side more than a few times. It wasn't really a shock that she kind of turned bad. I think it was poorly executed, but it wasn't out of character for her or the show for that to happen. So that's kind of... I'm thinking a lot about that with The Boys, because, you know, this whole show has been very subversive of superhero tropes. But at the same time, sometimes it embraces them. Sometimes you do have characters who were bad and do get a redemption. But it's like also a very cynical show about capitalism and fascism and America. And if you have the show end with the heroes come together to beat the bad guy and everything's good, I think that maybe doesn't fit with the broader message that the show has been about. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious where they're going to go with the ending. Also, the fact that they've apparently been planning more spin-offs and maybe want to do... I don't know if Gen V is going to continue or if it was just like part of the main story that was just like, oh, here's another show, but it's part of the main story. I don't know. But the fact that they seem to want to continue the universe after this kind of makes me a little less interested in the story, because like, I don't know if I want a whole The Boys cinematic universe. I was interested in these characters. And I, like I said, I am kind of ready for it to wrap things up. I feel like the whole the cynicism and subversiveness of The Boys and Invincible was something I was looking for into the late 2010s, and now it's not really what I'm looking for anymore. It feels like I'm ready for things to shift into something less cynical. And that's like part of why I haven't watched any of the Game of Thrones spin-offs. I mean, you know, it was partly because it just, the ending was very unsatisfying, and I'm kind of hesitant to get invested in another one of those. But also, it's like, I don't know if I want to like sit through all this very dark and cynical stuff again. Having my favorite characters killed off suddenly. I don't know if I want to get invested in another one of those. This room looks really cool when it's lit up. I did hear the Dunkin' Egg one was pretty good, so I might check that out. And like maybe like different in tone from the original show. Like, maybe not lighthearted, but it sounds like it's not as kind of dark and gritty and cynical. I guess on the topic of, you know, franchise spin-off shows, the Darth Maul show is pretty good. It's like, I like when Star Wars does, like, what if this genre, but it takes place in Star Wars. And I've talked about this a lot, but it's, you know, the original Star Wars was, what if samurai movies and westerns and dogfights and like a Lord of the Rings style adventure and just all of these genres. What if we mash them up and put them in space? And I think that's why it was so great. And then, like, one of my favorite Star Wars things in recent years was Skeleton Crew, because it was just, yeah, what if we do an 80s Kids on Bikes movie, but it's in space? And then it's also a pirate movie. Or, you know, a show. So that turned out really good. So, like, the Darth Maul show is basically like, what if it's an 80s cop movie, but in space? So it's like, okay. I'm kind of on board with that. You've got, like, the detective who's just drinking a lot of coffee and dealing with higher-ups who, you know, don't get it, and he's trying to keep it together and trying to deal with all the gangs, and like he knows the gang leaders by name, and he's kind of knows that they're doing stuff but can't put them away because that would make things worse. It's just like an 80s cop thing, but in Star Wars, and Darth Maul is there. And he like Darth Maul is jumping into the middle of this whole gang conflict that the cop is trying to deal with. They also have Dennis Haysbert there. He's like voicing this alien Jedi guy. Every time he talks, I'm like, oh, this alien's about to sell me Allstate. Oh man, I've been going for 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think this is the longest I've been doing one of these. I don't know. I might... Do I want to do this whole room? I might as well do this whole room. Still need to finish watching The Bad Batch. I just kind of fell off that a bit when they were releasing them weekly, and then kind of never caught back up. I just didn't really get into that one as much. It wasn't bad, I just felt very 80s action figures, which I think was what they were going for. Like, oh, we're gonna have a guy named Hunter, and he's the leader. And all Australian. And the guy named Specs, he's... What was it? I don't think it was Specs, it was... a very generic name for, like, a nerd character. Like, all the names just felt like... stuff an 80s kid would think is cool. And I don't think 80s kids were very good at... like, making decisions on what was cool. I think they, I don't know, maybe this is a hot take. I think most 80s nostalgic things are kind of dumb. Like, I just never really cared for Transformers. Like, I don't hate Transformers. I've liked a few of the movies and some of the games. Not the Michael Bay movies, but Bumblebee was pretty good. And Transformers 1 was really good. Not the first Michael Bay movie, but the movie that's literally called Transformers 1. But I just, like, never really cared about the franchise. Never really cared about G.I. Joe. What else? He-Man. Don't really care about He-Man. Don't really have much interest at all in the movie. Though, on the other hand, like, on the one hand, I don't really care about He-Man. On the other hand, Alison Brie is playing an evil goth woman, so maybe I'm a little bit interested. Like, Ghostbusters, I never got the Ghostbusters thing. Like, I watched the movies, and, like, yeah, they're good, but I never got the obsessive fandom. Like, it was just such a huge thing that people got so mad. Oh my god, they're desecrating Ghostbusters with that reboot. Like, you just ignore it, man. I don't know, it's... And then the other Ghostbusters reboot happened, and they were just so... like... treating the old Ghostbusters stuff like religious artifacts, and it just felt weird. I don't understand... I guess you just had to be there. Like, it was slightly before my time. Like, I do remember people liking Ghostbusters when I was a kid, but it wasn't this, like, huge thing. And it's weird because it feels like the movie kind of was a little bit inappropriate for kids. Like, not completely inappropriate, but there were parts that... Like, it was definitely a movie made for an older audience, not a movie made for kids to dress up as the characters. I don't know. It was... But like, you know, that's another case of like capitalism versus art and stuff. Is most of those things I just talked about were unambiguously created to sell toys. Transformers, He-Man, G.I. Joe, they wanted to sell toys, so they made cartoons with a very low budget. And the cartoons mainly existed to show off, hey, here's this character, don't you want to buy a toy of him? But it's like, I do think the people who made those cartoons were trying within their limited constraints to make something entertaining and fun for kids. And I'm sure in some like extended media, there have been like genuinely good stories told with those characters. So it's I don't know, like a case of, yeah, this was made, like it started as kind of a cynical thing to sell toys, but creative people worked within the constraints of capitalism and made something. And then, yeah, and like I just said, I liked Transformers 1 and Bumblebee. I also think that there is an art to toys. That making toys isn't a isn't necessarily like a lesser thing. And like the Transformers toys, they did make interesting toys that transformed in interesting ways. So I can respect people who kind of at least go to the effort of making fun toys. I do think there's a creative element there. Yeah. Because I'm a big Nintendo fan, and my big thing with Nintendo has always been like the reason their games are so fun is because they see themselves as a toy company. They're not a video game company, they're not a tech company, they are a toy company making video games. So they want their games to be fun. And I think there is I think that is a valid kind of angle to take. I think there is an artistry to making toys, to making things fun. And there's this kind of cynical, say a little bit elitist idea that like fun is a lesser emotion. That art that tries to inspire more negative emotions, sadness, and make you upset is more serious art, like more real art, more true art, that like art that tries to make you have fun, laugh, and be thrilled is kind of lesser art. I don't agree with that. I think that is a very limited perspective on what art is for. And it often comes from people who kind of have influence over that kind of stuff, and I think that kind of sucks. And you know, it's like the same kind of perspective that like treats animated films as lesser films. I don't know. Like, there's this thought that, like part of the whole are video games art argument that happened. Some people are still trying to have that argument. Like, man, if you're saying no, you lost. Like, you're the Japanese soldier stuck on an island decades after World War II, still trying to fight. Like, you lost. It's video games are art. Like, I don't know. But part of that art was always kind of pointing out people saying like, oh, video games can't make you cry, and people kind of pointing to games that can make you cry. But I think video games, like, I think it's harder for a game to make you laugh. Comedy in games is tough. Like, you want to make someone cry, you just, like, introduce a likable character and then kill them off tragically. And people are sad. Oh no. We want to make people laugh. Like, you gotta get them invested in the setup for a joke while playing a video game. If you want it to be more than like a it's got to be a real good joke, and that's why games like Portal and Undertale and Kid Icarus Uprising are so specifically memorable to people who played them, because they're genuinely funny. I think Undertale is interesting because like it's really easy to just be annoyed at that game, like how much it became a meme and how much people repeated the jokes and be like, and I guess Portal is kind of like this too, and just be like, the people who are like repeating the jokes out of context as memes, like they aren't funny, so surely the game can't actually be funny. And then you play the game, you're like, oh, this is actually hilarious. Like I saw the, like, yeah, Portal. I mean, I before I played Portal, I saw the Cake is a Lie memes everywhere, and they were not funny. If you haven't played the game, even if you haven't played the game, they're not funny because you're just repeating a line from the game. But in the game, the actual jokes and the pacing and the delivery are what make it funny. I don't know. And yeah, Undertale had a very similar thing where it just kind of fans repeated things out of context. And yeah. almost done. I mean, next stream might be the last stream. Just going back to Star Wars, I feel like the reason The Mandalorian kind of took off so much in that first season was because it felt so fresh, because it felt like just really leaning into the, oh, here's a Western, he's a cowboy, but it's in space thing. And I feel like they lost that a lot by the third season when they started getting wrapped up in Star Wars lore and stuff, and like Mandalorian lore, and that wasn't as interesting as a guy just kind of going around doing bounties, and now he has a weird green sun. So I hope the movie kind of recaptures that whole thing where it's like, he's just a guy, he's a cowboy, he's going around doing bounties, and he has a weird green sun. And it kind of seems like that's the direction they're going based on the trailer. It doesn't look like they're getting caught up in all this Mandalorian lore. It looks like it's just like Sigourney, is that Sigourney Weaver, I think? Gives him a list of targets, and he has to go take down all the targets. And it's like, yeah, I hope that's what the movie is. I hope they don't get in, because at some point, all of those shows sort of started trying to get into like setting up, oh, here's how Palpatine returned. By like, oh, there's all this cloning technology, and like trying to set that up, and it's just like, I don't really care. Like, that's not what I'm here for. There we go. I got the right one. What is this? Ah. Okay. I just saved. So what is that? I have 13,000 left. Ish. That's about like about 4 or 5 rooms. So yeah, next time might be the end.